versus connection creating thoughts. So this came up for a few reasons. One is because last Friday in the Facebook group during the live event, we were talking about memories, Facebook memories that come up on, your feed. As soon as I got on the live, one of the more endearing Facebook memories came up for me, and it was of my daughter, the one that I was mentioning to you guys a couple weeks ago for Easter. And she was just so cute with her little crown on her head. And I just said it out loud. It was like in the moment. And then we got into a conversation about, even though we really love those memories, we end up feeling like at the effect of whatever pops up on then we were talking about, on your iPhone or on your iPad. For me, especially on the weekends, I'll be sitting, here having my morning coffee or whatever, watching whatever's on TV, and I will look down and my iPad memories come up, and it will be like my daughter's name over the years or certain, time periods, right? And one of the members was like, yeah, those are the unsolicited memories that I wish sometimes wouldn't pop up. So that's what really got me started thinking about this topic over the weekend. Then, of course, I remembered that just actually right before recording that I do have an episode somewhat about this, and that was the Bittersweet Memories episode way early on, where I talked about how we have these amazing memories, but unfortunately, because of all that's happened since, those memories, sometimes we feel like they're tainted. We can't enjoy those anymore because so much has happened. So then it just ends up being, if only I would have done whatever, why couldn't it just be blah, 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 right? And so then we're back on that trail again. And I was sharing the other day, there was a period of time there where I completely avoided Facebook altogether for that purpose, just because of the memories that were popping up. Now, I love those memories today, but there was a time period, and I think we all go through this stage of our grief where we don't want to see anything. We don't want to have the reminders, right? Because inside, we're telling ourselves that we can't handle it, that we're too frail, that it's just too much, that it only causes us to feel sadness and what have you. So there's that. So that's what kind of got me started on this little pathway to today. Then I also heard another fellow coach talking, fellow coach who specializes in grief, not in our kind of grief, different. I mean, grief is grief, right? But different situations altogether. She actually gave me the words for even a step further. If you remember back in the guilt episode that I did not long ago, maybe a couple months ago, I think it might have been called Beyond Blame, the difference between guilt and shame or something like that. I shared with you guys my thoughts on why we hold on to the guilt and the regret that we might have about how it all went down. We hold on to that. Many of us hold on to the guilt and the regret as a way to keep ties with our children. We think if we don't guilt ourselves or sort of rake ourselves over the coals about whatever has happened and how it went down, we're doing them dirty, right? We're just not doing them justice. We're being disloyal. And I think that the more that I observe parents like us online, in the online spaces and the social media, TikTok particularly, parents that I talk to on a very regular basis, it's never said this way, but I feel like the idea is if I don't hold on to this narrative, and the only reason I feel like that this is the undertone of it is because this is exactly how I was. And I think I did actually say it in so many words. If I don't hold on to this painful story, then what am I left with? If I was to answer that, then I would be left with nothing. I didn't think this, but a has-been mom. And that was a really painful story. That was scary to me to think that that could be my new reality, that I was just this washed up mom. I don't even know how else to put that. That's not even a stereotype, but I think we all might share the same sentiment, is that if we're not holding on to the painful tone and narrative that we've been carrying for so long, we've lost our entire connection to our children. that without that pain, we would be left in like the abyss. That one string that was attaching us was the pain, and that's it. And that's just what I want to discuss with you guys today. Is basically, I want to draw the line or make the distinction between the two kinds of thoughts and the two kinds of stories that we might tell to ourselves in hopes of maintaining the sense of connection, but sometimes do just the opposite for ourselves. So let's get to it. In case this podcast is new for you, just a very quick overview. When we feel an emotion, it's not because of anything that actually happens outside of us or anything that somebody else does. It's because of the story that we have about it. It's because of how we're thinking about it up in our head. At any given moment, we will probably have 10 or 15 fragments of thoughts that are sort of bouncing around up there, floating around in your brain. And so we can be thinking a part of a thought or a thought that's causing us to feel pain in the moment. We can be thinking a thought that causes us to feel connected in the moment. Those things can happen at the same time simultaneously, but are never, ever one and the same. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there's pain and then there's connection, two separate things. Just like there's happy and there's sad and there's whatever and whatever. And pain, by the way, isn't the opposite of connection. Just wanted to make those distinctions. So you do not have to be feeling pain in order to feel connection, and vice versa. But so many of us mix the two up. We feel like this duty and think that if we don't carry a specific story that's painful to us, if we don't continue to tell that, then we're not being loyal to our kids. We're not being true to them, that we're not being real parents. Because what kind of parent would continue on and make this painful, awful story be a story of happiness, be a story of triumph, starting anew, a catalyst to a bigger, better, more improved life for yourself? I think we feel obligated to do this to identify ourselves as, yeah, I may not have my kids, but that doesn't mean that I'm not a parent. Because if we don't feel the pain, then clearly we must be a shitty parent and we must have deserved something. So the pain is like our qualifier, our identifier of being a good parent. If we don't have our kids two parents on the day-to-day basis like we used to, then what are we left with, right? We have to carry this story. This story is like our duty if we want to remain in parent status, in mom or dad status. So we end up repeating this painful story to ourselves over and over and over. After so long, it becomes a habit, a pattern. This is what your body is so used to. And as you know, our brain wants to be as efficient as possible. It doesn't want to have to put out any extra energy to be anything other than what we've already been, like just living to status quo. Oh, okay, if we're miserable, melancholy, tortured, victimized people, parents, then that's how we need to remain. It becomes the new normal. I really hate that term. Without it, then who the fuck are we? How are we even supposed to reckon with being like an out of work parent? And so the memories cause us pain. The idea of hope causes us suffering. So we end up just holding on to the pain because then at least we have something to take with us and say, okay, see, I don't have my kids right now, but do you see what I've been through? Listen, I am not saying there's anything wrong with you holding that story. There is not a damn thing wrong with you holding that story. I understand it 1,000%. And if you're cool with holding that story, then please continue on. It's not bad or good or right or wrong, none of it. And if it's causing you to feel exhausted, if it's causing you to feel stuck, like you cannot see a way out, then it might be good to notice where it's coming up for you. Decide one by one, do I want to continue telling this story? Is this serving the greater good of me and my child and my stuckedness? Is this working for me or not? So I'm going to give you some examples. First, I'm going to start with the pain-causing thoughts, and then I'm going to give you some examples of connection causing thoughts. Thoughts that cause pain. I don't know who to be without my kids home. I know that I've thought this on many occasions. They should be home with me. This shouldn't have happened. I'm not saying that it should have happened, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't feel pain about this. I just want to make the distinction that these thoughts are pain causing and they're not connection causing. I don't know who I am if I don't carry the story of pain with me. I will never be the same until or unless my kids are back home with me. This is one that I hear and see multiple times a day. Life will never be right until the kids are back with me. Say that to yourself right now. I'll never be the same until or unless my kids are at home with me. What does it cause you to feel? For me, it would be loss, lack, like I got robbed, like incomplete. A part of me left the day that my child did. How does that one feel? A huge part of me left on the day that my child did. That feels empty, right? Or that something's missing. Again, it's just good to know that these thoughts, all of these thoughts that I just mentioned, are causing different kinds of pain, right? Ask yourself first, why am I repeating this story? If you're not really sure why you're telling it, figure it out. Ask yourself, why am I telling this story? Oh, because I want to do them justice and I want people to understand and learn about parental alienation. Well, that's a whole different ballgame. Have you ever noticed that, like, when you go to try to tell somebody what has happened to you, what has happened with you, with your kiddo, you get all kinds of jumbled up and you're like instantly dropped right back into a huge trauma response. Dates get all weird and then you start over explaining and things get all complicated. And then you walk away from the conversation feeling super creepy and well, it's likely because you're lacking clarity about your objective going into the conversation. Like, what are you trying to accomplish during this conversation? What message am I trying to convey to the person that's in front of me or the people that are in front of me? And so depending on what your goal is there, your story, what comes out, it's going to look different. If you are determined to let people know about alienation, you're going to have one way and one emotion as you're explaining, because your objective is to educate people about what's going on. Then you're not stuck at the effect of the nervousness and fear of what people are thinking about you. And are they judging you because they think that you're a bad parent? Or do you have an objective and a higher purpose? Because when you know that, it's going to be a much smoother delivery. I just went off on a little sidebar there, but it is very helpful to when you're getting ready to tell whatever story. And this goes for really anything. It doesn't just have to be about your situation of alienation, but especially with our situations of alienation, because we get so in the weeds in our head, and then we lose sight of what the ultimate goal is. And if you have that goal coming into the conversation on the forefront of your mind and you generate that emotion ahead of time, this is why the work that I did that got me here and the work that I offer my clients, it's invaluable. It is such an amazing lifelong tool that you can use, because when you learn how to generate thoughts that cause the emotion that you want to feel, then you can get anything done you want, like literally anything done you want. You can deliver the most impossible message to the most impossible group of people, right? And not care whether they are judging you or not. And most of the time, when you're caring about whether they're judging you, that's when they're doing the judging, because you're not confident and you're not delivering the message properly, right? But when you are clear on your objective, when you're clear of what you want that message to be and the emotion that you want to feel while delivering it, well, then it's a whole different ballgame. Okay, now that's really gone off on a little bit of a tangent, and let me veer myself right back to feeling connection. So if you're repeating those pain-causing thoughts to yourself in hopes to find connection, you're going to be very disappointed. Most of the time we do this and we don't even realize that this is what's going on. You know, it is there if you dig deep, like the emotional brain's like, yeah, but this is what's keeping us tied to our kiddo. Is that if we don't do this, if we're not spinning our wheels constantly and feeling frantic, feeling pain, feeling the suffering going on, then what are we doing? Then we're not even a parent anymore. And where does that leave us? Right? Does that mean that we don't have any connection? How are we ever is that gonna dwindle away if we're not in constant pain about what has happened, this ongoing tragic event of alienation? If we're not in constant pain about that, then the connection with our children is no longer, because what else is there for us? Especially if you're not seeing your kids on the day-to-day basis or even at all, what else is there for us if we're not holding on to this story? We're just going to disintegrate into the ether. But it's not true. It is not true. I promise you, I'm living proof of that. In fact, when you're telling those painful stories, what you're doing is creating the opposite of connection with those that you want to hold on to so tightly. Okay? So, examples of connection causing thoughts, closeness causing thoughts would be, no matter where I go, no matter what I do, you are always with me. You are always on my mind. That thought, so long as in the right tone, I guess, causes me to feel connected to my child. It causes me to trust, to know, a deep kind of knowing that no matter what, she's there with me and I'm there with her. You guys have heard me say it probably on repeats. We are interwoven into the fabric of each other. There is no way to remove me from her or her from me. It's scientifically impossible, genetically impossible. So when I remember that, then I feel connected to her, feel connected with her. When I tap into, sort of like I was addressing last week, when I tap into the energy that is in the core of me, that is connected to all of the other energies in the universe, I feel a deep connection to her, with her. And I truly trust that we will come back together again. Another thought I think is, you taught me how to love more deeply and more fully than I ever have. She was my first real, true lesson in, when she was with me, motherly love. And I know this goes for all of you too, of the willingness to give every part of me without question, without pause, without any sort of hesitation. She taught me that. She taught me how to love when she was a little infant, And I will always be connected to her, with her, because of that. And then after alienation really took hold and she was over at her dad's, she taught me, she was the reason that I learned a whole new kind of, a way deeper level of unconditional love, the purest kind of love, where I can truly delight in her even from afar and don't expect anything coming from her way. It's okay. It's okay, no matter what, even if she spews hate. That I've only learned that by getting right with myself, by providing for myself that which I used to expect would come from a daughter or from a child, I provide that for myself, and then I don't expect her to do anything, but that's not where we're going with this. And so I just keep doing that. Another thought is, I carry your love with me in everything I do. Sometimes I choose to think that even the little ways that I show up online, for instance, even here, I don't know that, I'm almost positive that she hasn't listened to any of these episodes as of yet. And I don't know if she ever really will go this far. This is long form content, but I do think that the social media, Instagram and TikTok, is a definite possibility, right? And so I do choose to think that each time I post, I'm in a way putting that out there to connect with her. I do feel connected with her with that in mind, with my intention always to whatever it is that I say, whether that's in the privacy of my own home or out there in public, right? Like in this episode and all the episodes, I always choose to represent myself and model for her in the way that I know that 20 years from now that she might be proud, and the way that I know that 20 years from now version of me would be proud for us, for her included. And so those kinds of things, those thoughts, that mindset helps me to feel, like purposeful in my connection with her. And it feels a lot better than holding on to these old stories. That's for me. I know that for you and for me for a long time, I was not comfortable with letting go of the painful stories. And like I said, I'm not suggesting that you do it either, but I do think it is very helpful to know that the first set of thoughts are going to cause you something different than connection. They're going to cause you to feel pain and suffering, and that's okay. And then you have the second set of thoughts that, at least for me, thoughts like these typically cause feelings of connection, togetherness, purpose, greater good, right? Of unconditional love too, and understanding, a sense of compassion and empowerment. The thing is that for me, with the first set of thoughts, right? When I was really indulging in the old stories, the pain, the stuckness, the suffering. When I sat in those, that I never would be the same, when she left, that a part of me left, and that part of me will never return, that she took a chunk out of me. Even when I was saying it back then, I always felt scarcity, and it felt so final, not just for my daughter, but that whole idea of like when you lose a pet, they take a part of you with them. I don't love it. And I also don't believe it's true. First off, it doesn't happen. A part of you does not actually leave you, right? So literally, physically, it cannot be true. But even in your heart, you still have that same amount of love, if not more love to give, once you've learned how to open up that part of you. It's like a muscle, right? And the more that you use it and in the different modalities and ways that you're able to exercise it, the stronger and bigger and more capable it becomes. You don't lose the ability to love after loving, even after being hurt, experiencing pain as a result of loving. You don't lose the ability, you just get better at it. If you choose, that could define you forever if you wanted it to. But actually, because you're learning how to do something different, maybe uncomfortable, you actually are widening your scope of ability. Does that make sense? Love ability. Anyway, so we're left with entirely different results from the connection-causing thoughts and the pain-causing thoughts. We think that we're going after connection by grasping on to that one last string that's tying us to our children. But in fact, by thinking these thoughts, they cause pain and cause us to feel more distant from them, right? Not connection. When we think, my kids have not been here for this long, this never should have happened. Again, not wrong. They've been erased from my life. I have been erased from their life. Things will never be the same. I will never be the same without them. All of that causes much lack, at least for me. Like I said, close your eyes and you think about it. How do you feel when you repeat those thoughts to yourself? But to me, I'm going to assume that those thoughts will cause you to feel more distant from them than you felt before you said those things. You don't have to be tethered to that story. It is not your duty. It is not your responsibility. You are and always will be an active parent, because the work and the diligence and the humility, dedication, and devotion it requires to be a parent like you and I are, it is an extremely active role that most parents will never, ever know. You are an active parent. You always will be an active parent. Even if there are days that you aren't being diligent in your healing, the fact that you are going on each day, facing and have faced the challenges that you have, and you're still going, you are more active than most parents out there. It's so easy to take the kids to soccer practice, put them to bed, bathe them, and to tell them to be home by 10 on the weekends. Everybody else is doing that. That is cookie cutter fitting in. What we are doing, what you are doing, it is magnificently hard. It's unbelievably brave. So you are a parent. You are more of a parent than many of them out there. And not that we should compare and put ourselves up or down or wherever, but I'm just saying, if you have been scared that by letting go of this painful story that you will also let go of your role, you're mistaken. You're confused. You are and always will be an amazing, devoted parent. We cannot control what the alienating parent has done and is doing. We can't. You know that, right? The court systems, they suck. Let's be real. And also, it's my belief and it's my way, and I want to help you guys to think thoughts and show up in ways that work to your benefit. Using all the info and the tools that we have, let's change the narrative. Let's change the story, our story together moving forward. If we're showing up feeling, we're not really showing up at all, but if we are feeling feeling disconnected and isolated, apart from, alienated, the likelihood of us showing up in an effective, influential way, the chances are low. The chances are that when we go to show up to spread the word, to talk to people, to engage with others, that we will show up feeling not enough, feeling shame, feeling disconnected, not heard, not seen, judged, all the things. So it really is important for you guys to be clear on the message, not only that you want to convey, but the message that you feel in your heart. And how do you want to feel moving forward, right? How can you start thinking thoughts that match what you want to create for yourself? It's entirely possible to do, and without denying yourself the right and the reality of experiencing the grief that you do have and hold as a result of being a target parent of alienation. So thoughts that connect, thoughts that distance yourself from them. You don't have to hold on to that painful story if you don't want. All right, you guys, have a lovely week.
Thanks so much for listening today. If you like what you're hearing and you'd like to hear more, please make sure to click subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. Also, for bite-sized clips and tips, be sure to find me on TikTok or Instagram. See you next week.